Hello, welcome to my presentation where I hope to encourage you to plant native vegetation instead of turf grass to create a better native landscape. Let's touch on why we want to do this as soon as I can get to the next slide. There we go. Why should we create a better native landscape? Here are a few reasons, though this is certainly not an exhaustive list. With the development and sprawl of suburbia, we all know so many natural habitats have been destroyed. Vegetation that helps clean the air and protect against erosion, all disappearing. Wildlife is finding it more difficult to live and grow and reproduce. Our environment and our health is improved where outdoor spaces are allowed to grow. Native plants cost less to maintain because they are accustomed to the climate and don't require much water beyond what naturally falls from the sky. They also don't require as much time to maintain as a lawn. So how can we successfully replace our regular turf grass with low maintenance native plants? First is that removal of the turf grass, right? There are two main ways to remove the grass. You can rent a sod cutter and roll it up in strips, or you can layer wet cardboard and mulch or compost to suffocate the grass. Then, after the area is prepped for planting, put in your native plants so that they'll cover at least half of the area when they've grown to maturity. In between the plants, these are shrubs, flowers, ground cover, trees. In between, make sure that all exposed soil is covered with rock or mulch. And replace those overhead spray sprinklers with a drip irrigation system or water by hand to save water. Make sure that any hardscapes like a path or a patio allow water to flow through. Let me just go into a little more detail about that cardboard method. It's called sheet mulching, and it's very good for the soil since you're adding elements that just decompose. It's also very economical, but it does take some time, usually weeks, sometimes months. You cut the grass as short as possible, lay cardboard over everything, and make sure to overlap by at least 6 inches so that that grass doesn't grow through. Then get it all very, very wet and cover that wet cardboard with some mulch and let it sit. It can take quite a bit of time, but it's so simple, anybody can do it. As you're deciding which plants to include in your landscape, you'll want to consider the size of the plants at maturity and when they bloom and how much sun and water they require. As you can see in this table, I've listed a few examples. Creeping phlox there at the top is a ground cover that grows out about 3 feet. Purple sage, you can look down there in the middle there, says underwater, no irrigation. That means it doesn't require any more water than what is naturally coming from the sky once it is established. You can also include something like a evergreen that stays beautiful year-round and also doesn't need any extra water once it is established. So once you've researched your options, you need a detailed plan to be successful. Sketch out a design. You could use a computer application or some graph paper. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just make sure you account for the sizes of everything once they have grown to maturity. Like this maple tree over here on the left, you're going to plant it and it will just be a couple inches to a couple feet. But then once it grows to maturity, it would take up this whole circle area that is drawn. So let me tell you about the Williams. They were so excited to move into their first house and have a yard. Jack and Mary have a couple kids and a couple dogs, and they love to play outside with those children and dogs. They anticipated many hours spent in that half-acre backyard, just playing, right? After a few months, though, they realized that they did spend a lot of time out there, but more of the time was spent on maintenance instead of play. They also got sticker shock when their utility bills started to arrive because their water was costing them more than triple what they'd paid when they lived in apartments. Turf grass requires a lot of water. They quickly realized that all that grass was more detrimental to their physical and mental health than maybe some native landscaping options. So Jack and Mary excitedly got to work designing their landscape project. They used a drought-tolerant plant list to guide their plan. It was published by their local city water department. And they learned that a well-designed scape will beautify their property, protect natural resources in the environment, use less water, and inevitably reduce yard maintenance. They decided that their project will include drought-tolerant plants on half of the yard, a rock patio, bark mulch covering all exposed soil, and a simple drip irrigation sprinkler system instead of overhead spray sprinklers. The Williams decided to invest a hefty amount of money up front to then have a small maintenance requirement later. Let me show you the after. Ooh, isn't that gorgeous? Yes, that is like HGTV worthy. They needed some help. They did bring in some professionals, but with that rock patio that water can flow through, and they kept their mature trees, just a little bit of grass. All of this to install was pretty expensive, but now it doesn't take much to maintain. And their utilities have diminished by more than half. They're very happy with their yard. They can play with their kids and their dogs and not spend so much time maintaining all that grass. They're pretty proud to be responsible citizens. Let me show you a couple more before and afters because that's so fun and it might be a little more accessible. Here's a front yard. Looks like all of that could be done by the homeowner except for the stair step, maybe little path. And of course, the gate and the wall probably took a professional, but everything else looks pretty easy to do, right? Here's another one. Just a few of the native vegetation, and then some varying sizes of rocks and mulch to provide some interest. Here's a great one. You can notice how they moved where all the rocks are so that the water from the downspout just flows down those rocks, and added a couple of terracing retaining walls, kept the tree. All of these are very doable. I hope you can see the importance of incorporating native plants in your landscape and how easy it can be. For more information, I invite you to go to SpokaneScape.org, grownative.org, or find us on Instagram at Better Native Landscape.